So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you are today. I'm very excited to start this first webinar of MyData. And the aim is really to give the space and time to introduce different ongoing initiatives, projects, and developments that are relevant to MyData Global's purpose and fill a role in making MyData vision happen. My name is Silla Sepp. I serve as the community lead for MyData Global, and I will be moderating this call, where the key topic is then data governance and aspects around building a trustworthy personal data ecosystem. We have two initiatives being presented today. Lisa LeVasseur will introduce the nonprofit organization called Me2B Alliance, which is fostering the marketplace of trustworthy technology through the creation of a consumer-facing certification mark to be applied to any internet-connected products or service. And then secondly, we have Olivier, Dion, and Matthias, the Bièvre, who will share about the new governance initiative, which is aimed at coordinating all the stakeholders of the ecosystem in order to propose shared and open standards for the free flow of data under the strict individual's control, following the MyData's values, architecture, and principles. We have agreed with Lisa, Olivier, and Matthias that both of them take approximately 15 to 20 minutes for introducing their initiatives. And then after each presentation, we would have also time for a few questions to clarify any points that were made or if you have any questions. And then in the end of this webinar, we will have a short discussion also about the topic generally. Before I go ahead and give the word then to Lisa, I would let you also know that this webinar is being recorded, so we can share this also with anybody who is not available to attend today. And if you wouldn't be okay to voice out your comments or questions yourself, then I encourage you to take or make use of the Zoom chat room during the call to leave your comments and questions there, so we can take them up also in the discussion in the end of this webinar. All right, then I'll pass on the microphone to Lisa, and she will also share her screen for slides.
Thanks, Sile. Good morning, everyone. All right, well, thank you for inviting me to share a little bit about what we're doing. I still feel like we're a pretty nascent organization. We're the Me2B Alliance, and as you mentioned, the title of this overview, this brief introduction, is Market Creation Through Measurement and Consumer Awareness. I guess I kind of fine-tuned this a little bit, but really to put a fine point on kind of our strategy and our focus, it is this. I have been watching this space for many years, watching lots of discussions, watching people come and go, and things emerge and then they pass away, and we seem to be having some trouble coalescing. And about a year ago, I went to IIW and presented this idea that I had for this certification mark. And so this gives a little bit of an overview of our organization, how it came into be, what it is we're trying to do, and how we're trying to accomplish that. So our vision, our overarching vision, is really ensuring human dignity and agency and connected products and services. That is really the sort of highest level of aspiration that we serve. And our mission, the thing that we have our sights on trying to make real every day, is growing the availability of trustworthy technology choices, which I think is really what any organization in this space is doing. And some of you already know this, but one of the things we're building, and I'll touch on it later, is it's an index of all of the organizations who are working on this in this space, really working on this, trying to change the quality of technology that's out there from surveillance capitalism to something more empowering and humane. So we've got something around 150 organizations that are working on this. So there's a lot of us working on this. And this is a little bit the rationale of why I believe the certification mark can have the kind of power that I think it will have. Is from certification drives awareness. Like as soon as there is some kind of indication for people to see, they'll become aware. Oh, you know, what does that mean? And what does that score mean? Oh, they have a pretty bad score. Let me learn more about that. And then that would eventually drive demand. Like I want the product that has the good certification mark on it. And then ultimately that will drive choice, lots of choice in the marketplace. So this is kind of the high level rationale for why I came at this with a certification mark. I should also mention that I have a long background in telecom standards, many years in telecom development, mobile telecom, and industry standards. And I was involved hands-on with a particular industry standards organization called the CDMA Development Group, which only came into being because the industry standard, the 3GPP spec, as it's called, was not interoperable in a plug-and-play sense. There were too many options built into it, and so what was happening in practice was that manufacturers producing infrastructure and manufacturers producing phones, the equipment didn't work. It wouldn't work unilaterally. It was not interoperable. So this organization was formed to basically arbitrate the standard and come up with the interoperable version of the standard, certify it, have a certification lab, and do the promotion and PR around it. Were it not for that organization, I hypothesize that CDMA would not be kind of where it is in the world today. So, and there's lots of examples like this where standards and certification processes and the mark itself has become a tool of awareness. And so that was my rationale for coming up with this idea of really what we need is we need a certification mark. So what is our overarching North Star, our ethical North Star? I come at this with a concept of Me2B relationships. And these are the relationships that we have with any kind of product or service provider. So the thing that has changed because of the internet is that what used to be perhaps a one-off transaction with a product or service provider is now an ongoing dialogue between us and websites or web services or apps or products, connected products. It is an ongoing, constant stream of two-way transactions. And therefore, it now has the quality of a relationship, of an actual human relationship. And so this is really where we ground our thinking in, and we want to elevate and socialize this concept that, look, these aren't just like purveyors to you. You have an actual relationship with them. And the reason this is important is because whether we're in a relationship with another person or an organization or a brand, like in Me2B relationships, we know how to behave in relationship. And so I took a long, hard look at sort of the dynamics of healthy relationships as a kind of ethical North Star for us to follow. And these rules of engagement that we've derived really come from characteristics of healthy relationships. So it kind of comes out of a psychology, human psychology background. And you know, what are the characteristics of healthy human relationship? So things like freedom, liberty, respect of boundaries, respectful defaults, fairness and non-exploitation, good communication, open communication, honest communication, non-harming, and problem solving. These are all characteristics of healthy human relationships. So what we want to do is then take these and apply them practically to people creating technology, connected to technology. So the three guiding principles, we wanted to make this very usable. And you'll see more about why we're so sort of laser focused on usability. We wanted to keep our principles very simple. And right now we only have three. And they align really closely, I think, with the MyData pledge and principles also. They're just sort of coming at it from a slightly different way. So we're framing them and we're using slightly different language, but there's, of course, a lot of overlap in the principles that drive us all in this space. So the principles are, I'm in charge. As an individual, I'm in charge of the relationship. And we agree to play nice by those rules of engagement that I just shared. And the third one is really kind of important. And it's a little bit different than the other ones. It has a slightly different flavor, but it's really pretty simple also, is no data without a Me2B relationship. In human life, we are not happy when people gossip about us behind our backs without our knowledge to other people that we may or may not know. We have institutionalized this practice in the form of data brokers, right? It's not okay in so far as relationships go. So a fundamental tenet is, if you're collecting data about me, we need to be in a relationship, and I need to be in charge. So it's a little bit of a recursive relationship here in these principles. So how do we get there? So I describe us as a different kind of standards organization than Me2B Alliance. We're multi-stakeholder by design. We are more than just technical specifications, and actually that is, I wish we only were technical specification, because believe it or not, that's a lot easier. As hard as that act is, it's a lot easier than one that addresses ethics and usability. And another critical thing is that we are very intensely focused on results and getting changes made in the space. I mentioned earlier that, we've been looking, the space has been kind of percolating for 15, 20 years. And we'd really like to try to coalesce and get things moving more concretely. We have two primary strategies. I call this our DNA. Our strategy number one is to collect, amplify, and share the voice of individuals with technology vendors. So this is about bringing the voice of the person into standards. This is an aspect of standards work that is simply absent, right? Most standards work is done by like the smartest, brightest technology developers that are out there looking, 5, 10, 20 years ahead, and creating technology that won't hit the market for, at least another 10 years or so. So so individuals have no space. They're not heard in that, and we'd like to correct that problem. The second critical strategy about what we're doing is to really complement work that's already being done, to identify gaps, fill them, glue them together, and support them. I am like super sensitive to repetitious work, redundant work. I hate it. It's inefficient. I have like an allergy to inefficiency. So we're like, as I mentioned, we have that database of all of the groups that are already doing stuff, and we are continuing to strive to operate in the seams, as it were, to try to coalesce things and catalyze things. So we're multi-stakeholder by design, and the multiple stakeholder groups are people, businesses, those are the two critical ones, and then of course all the catalysts and support organizations. And one of the things I'm grappling with our governance structure that we're just putting in place right now, or just defining, is how do we create a way to have something more than ceremonial relationships between other organizations working on this stuff? And how do we have real interdependency? How do we do project management where some deliverables are coming out of MyData, some are coming out of Me2B, some might be coming out of Kantara or other organizations? How do we develop that fabric? I don't have an answer for that just yet, to be clear, but it's a problem that I'm keenly aware of. And so this is just a little bit of a blow up of the kinds of support organizations that that are involved in working on this stuff, and it's a pretty wide array. So the projects that we're working on this year, this is our first year, And what we're working on for people is we're working on doing some market research, and we're producing a digital harms dictionary. And that digital harms dictionary is available. All of our work is available at our website and our repository. It's all open. And in fact, you can edit things. So please be careful if you should feel inclined to go look at things. Just be mindful that if you delete something, you delete it, because we're erring on the side of openness right now. So those two things were the market research and the digital harms dictionary for tools to start educating people. On the businesses side, we've developed a code of practice, and the primary brunt of our work is going to be the certification mark. We're also looking at some US policy and legal work. It's actually some US and some global. And if you're interested in what we're doing there, you can sign up and take a look. And then finally, for the catalyst and support organizations, the thing we're doing right now is we're producing a graph-based org finder wiki. So this spreadsheet that we have and you can find in our repository is a little bit hard to navigate. And what we're trying to do is to create a public wiki that is a public good. It will not even be branded Me2B. We don't want people to feel like it's, you know, some weird proprietary thing. It's not. It's an offering to the community. We want it to be a useful tool for everybody, so that people, if they want to find out who's working on SSI, they can find out. If they want to find out who's working on human factors, they can find out. It's an index to all of these groups and initiatives in our space. So we have 3 very active working groups right now and a few more in the wings. The Good Cops working group, that's good code of practice, and this is really our certification work. The policy and legal group, the PALS working group, is also active, and then the consumer stakeholders working group. So these things are meeting regularly, and we have deliverables and working on a tighter project plan for both this year and next year. And a brief glimpse at our board of directors. It's very slim right now. We just incorporated about a month or 6 weeks ago. So we're still sorting through like I said, the governance of the organization and the whole structure of it. So our board is small right now. We expect it will get larger, but right now it's Johannes Ernst, myself, and Doc and Joyce Searles. And if you want to get involved, you can go to our website and join, or just poke around and look. We also have a lot of resources. I'm trying to put together also lots of resources relating to usability, relating to certification marks and labels, as well as consent, which is a sort of pet project of mine. The usability of consent and other permission schema. And so we have a lot of references also available on the website there. So that's really all I had to share. So I like to invite questions now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Lisa. We have participants in the call, so I would first open this up for them before I'll ask my question. If not, or people find their unmuting button, then I would actually want to ask a little bit of the certification mark, because there has been wishes, talks about also MyData establishing some type of mark, trust mark, or so forth. So how do you see this? And this is what you talked about as well, that there are different groups working on different aspects of this trustworthy ecosystem. Once there would be different types of certification marks, like how would you see this as working together or complementary to each other or so forth?
Yeah, it's a good question. And one of the things we're scoping for next year, it's a project name called Project Agora. and that's just an internal name. But it's what we are envisioning is to develop a marketplace platform where people can find good technology. And this any product in this catalog, so it's something like Product Hunt in the US, producthunt.com. If actually it's a global platform, but if you're familiar with that. But any certification mark could be there. And there are lots of different certification marks. I'll tell you right now, we're not going to cover it all because it becomes meaningless. So one of the critical things that we're doing right now is we're starting to go back to people and talk to them about what's important to them. What what would make them change their mind about, downloading an app or using an app or a website or an IoT product. We need to find more real feedback from them on what's really important. I've been doing a lot of research on this, and the research papers are listed on our website. And a lot of, there's a disturbing amount of data coming back saying labels aren't going to do anything. And so I'm trying to dig deeper into that to figure out why that is and what we should be, how we navigate that. So again, this is going back to the individual and finding out what's really meaningful to them. Like what sort of thing would actually influence their behavior. And it's a little bit chicken and egg. And I realize that this is going to take time for any mark to have any kind of meaning because the individual has to establish trust of the mark as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think there will be multiple.
Mm-hmm.
I think there will be multiple, and I think that will be just fine because it's a huge job. So.
Yeah, and I also during the presentation you mentioned the digital harms dictionary, and which I liked very much because in a way to give means to collaborate from like across the different stakeholders, we need to also share language and have the same vocabulary to understand the different topics and so forth. So could you share a little bit more about the dictionary and how's that built?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is also an open resource on our website. You can go to it. It's under living documents in the repository. And this is something also that we want to turn into kind of a wiki. It's like a public wiki, like a public good available for everybody, maintained by the community, the world. And we agree that this is a really powerful, even more powerful than we expected. We presented it at IIW and got a lot of interest and support around it. And also, it's too big for us. There are huge chunks in there. I raised the case of deep fakes. We don't have anything about content and deepfakes. That's like outside of our purview. A lot of the stuff that the Center for Humane Technology is focused on, that's outside of our purview. Those are all harms, and they live in the harms dictionary. But we're working with those organizations to see if they can kind of own those pieces of the harms dictionary, and because it's going to take a village to get this all together. The other tricky aspect of this harms dictionary is tying it to actual law and the language of the law. And that is also a very tricky thing. We have a lot of lawyers who are involved in our work, strangely and happily. So, but we haven't finished. We haven't really totally started that. We have a couple columns in the harms worksheet, which is our best guess at the actual legal harm, and we baseline against Daniel Solov's harms taxonomy, digital harms taxonomy, and then we're also using GDPR to put it in the terms of the GDPR sort of language of harms.
Great, thank you for sharing about this. There's also a question from the participant here, so could you go?
Sorry, it's Yagu here. I had a better moment just a few seconds ago, but I tried to ask my question. It's regarding the more than ceremonial relationship between the organizations. This is something that is super, super, super important for MyData. We are just in the progress of defining the first version of the strategy for the organization, and we have there like hanging notion of like a placeholder for this question. It goes under the title of Friends Organization, and the philosophy behind is quite much tied to what you call there the relationships. So we think that organizations are not very good at doing friendships, and it's very selfish how organizations think of relationships. So it's easily goes so that everybody invites, yeah, come to here, come to us. We are open, come to our webinars, come to our conferences, but then the bandwidth is done, and we don't have time to go to other places. And if you think this as a human friends, if there is some so-called friend that always says that, yeah, let's do let's go bowling because I like to go bowling, and let's go to movies because I like to go movies, but whenever somebody else suggests anything, he's too busy. So I'm really thinking of what would be the pragmatic ways of developing more kind of friendships between organizations, so that there is some like trust between friends. And also I think it comes from the history, so shared experiences. So when organizations have some shared roots and people know each other, it's easier to do the friendship. And I'm like specifically avoiding the use of term collaboration here, because that it's very much formalizing it. Collaboration may, well, that's kind of the professional way of seeing the relationships, and then you can collaborate if you have joint projects and money flowing in and so forth. But in order to get those, I think it's good if we can develop some sort of more less formal relationship between organizations. I don't know how to do it, but I'm very open for the discussion.
Yeah, me too. I look forward to having those discussions, and just a couple of thoughts popped up to me too about this one. So our organization finder wiki, we think, is a first step in doing this. The other thing, I'm a product manager. I spent a lot of my career doing product management, so I'm like sort of highly attuned to deliverables and interdependencies. And the thing that I'm interested in exploring is there a way to create real interdependency across organizations, like I was describing, and like have the expectations for some work coming out of other organizations. One example is coming up in Kantara. So I'm active in in several groups in Kantara, and we are thinking to maybe do do a little bit of work, like cultivate a document in Me2B, and then put it back into Kantara. So those kinds of like real things of like, okay, and this was just a handshake agreement, like you say, like a friendly, informal thing. This wasn't like, a formal like sign the form and we're going to project manage this and we're going to put investment into this, nothing like that. And yeah, I'm really keen to work with you guys to figure out something pragmatic and effective.
Great, thank you. I would stop here for any questions. If you have more, then please write them down into the chat, and we can still come back to them in the end of the webinar. And then give the word to Olivier and Matthias to present the new governance initiative.
Hello, everyone. Really happy to be with you today. I'm Olivier Dion. So I'm a new governance coordinator with Matthias. So a new governance is a new initiative from MyData, and we will share with you what we are doing right now about exactly what we were just discussing, the governance issue, the fact that we will have to, if we want to make it happen, we'll have to make people work together. So this is our proposition. So the main goal of this initiative is to build a democratic platform that coordinates all the stakeholders for a fair data economy. And for this, we will help building standards for the free flow of data under the strict individuals control. So it's a make it happen, but it's a meta structure on top of it that will help organizations and people to agree on a way of doing things. If we look at what is existing already, existing initiatives, so we put it in 3 different categories. The first one is the DTP, so Data Transfer Project, is a project from the GAFAM, so Google, Facebook, and Apple for the most part. So DTP is a great expression of what we are used to already today. De facto standards brought on the market by big tech players. This is normal. This is what we've always seen. But the problem we see with DTP is that it's a very tech-only standard, and making it happen is much more than tech. And there is no governance attached. They decide by themselves. And there is a platform-centric view from the GAFAM and not a user-centric one like what we want in the MyData community. So the risk is that they have control over the way things deploy, and we don't want that. We want so our position is that we don't want to do things without them, of course, but the rules should be defined together with a larger panel of stakeholders. Then we'll get various initiatives like Kantara, like national initiatives, federation initiatives, or consortium initiatives. We've got many, and thanks to GDPR, now there is a tremendous energy in the ecosystem. So we've got more initiatives every day, basically. The thing is, those initiatives are very fragmented, unlike the data transfer project, redundant, and limited by country, expertise, or sector. The risk is that it deploys too slow compared to DTP, and that you get interoperability issues between the different initiatives. So we think that we can build on top of this, but with a specific effort on coordination. And finally, we've got Europe with GDPR that triggered data circulation thanks to the right to portability in the ecosystem. But we believe that we need a step 2 with GDPR, more practical with standards. And what we want to do with the New Governance Initiative is to call for the EU to co-design the governance with them. It's a political issue too. Now it's not just technological. So to us, this is we share our view about this issue. How to make it happen? We need to address gray areas from Article 20, the right to portability, and we need to acknowledge that there are various initiatives, but there is still a lack of openness and coordination, and that if we want if we want to make it happen, we need the cost to drop a lot. So we need a unique standard. And for this, what we build with a new governance is a dedicated place to coordinate stakeholders in order to define standards. So we are talking about technical, law, design, business, ethics, and so on. All the aspects of what would help the free flow of data for people. And a new governance is not standard initiative by itself. It's the standard supporting initiative. It helps organization to agree. We're not all organizations are not friends. They don't have to be. Sometimes they are, sometimes they are not. And we aim at defining the set of rules for them to work together and to come to an agreement. This is basically what you do for a state with a constitution, bodies, and processes for organizations to talk together. And we believe today that the MyData community is the perfect nest for achieving this goal, and especially if it works with the European Union.
So what are the main principles for governance?
Matthias, it's a little bit hard to hear you. Can you go closer?
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, very good.
Okay, thank you. So the main principles we see in a new governance, and this comes from many discussions we've had with various stakeholders all over Europe. First of all is that it has to be value-based and not money-based. The values are the MyData Declaration with the separation of powers principles, meaning that the organizations, the operators in charge of the transfer and the authorizations of data are not the same ones doing the processing and the exploitation of the data. A bottom-up and top-down approach, and I will go into more detail right after, has to be, of course, as Olivier said, cross-sector, because it cannot be, that data is no longer siloed. And so many sectors have to be involved and share interoperability standards, and various expertise have to be mobilized: design, technical, legal, business model, and ethical expertise to cover all aspects of the subject. It's not to recreate the wheel, it's not to create new standards, but it's to harmonize standards and build on top of existing ones. So more granularly, how would it work? There are two main principles: the top-down first, which is, let's say, taking GDPR, taking ethical guidelines, taking, let's say, also the Me2B rules Lisa was talking, and translating it into standards. So inside there is a matricial organization with several hubs, which actors from each sectors agreeing together, and expertise work groups, which are transverse to sectors on legal matters, on technical matters, on business model matters, and on design matters. The very important part in how we imagine this and are building this is the bottom-up part. Is not to just create standards, theoretical standards, but to focus on concrete use cases. This serves two main purposes. First, this unites actors to really build the standard, because use cases bring value to people and to organizations, and this will motivate them to create a standard and do the technical effort to implement it. The other reason is that if we take, let's say, the mobility as a service project, we see that in each city they are having the same will to build a mobility platform and the same lack of standards and lack of tools. If we create such standards, we know that it will spread and scale to all cities. So focusing on concrete projects unites actors because they see the value, and through this interest make them work together. And then we have concrete rules on how decisions are made. And the end goal is to make organizations dependent on that infrastructure and on that standard to make data circulate and to gain value from it, always with the MyData architecture and principles at the core of the standards. So where are we now? It started a bit more than a year ago on more theoretical work. We united 50 actors from 15 countries inside a white paper, and we presented it with MyData. Timo and Vivi came at the French Parliament in April. And since then, we have continued uniting actors, and you see some of the logos here to further build the constitution and the governance and select some first projects. We showcased it as well at the Helsinki conference, and our goal now in 2020 is to start working on concrete use cases. So mobility is one, education is another, and there will be a call for projects soon to start working on standards and to scale it up and get funding from the European Commission to actually build it and implement those different rules. So the next step is we're going to set up now until the end of the year an office in Brussels, select pilot projects, set up the first working groups, and then throughout 2020 work on the projects and apply the methodology to define standards, collect more and more declaration of intents and memberships to enter a new governance and MyData, and have a clear communication strategy and co-design a strategy with the European institutions so that we get more funds and get a more institutional approval of the standards that are that will emerge from those projects.
Thanks, Matthias. So we've got 3 call to actions with this with a new governance initiative. First, you can sign, your organization can sign the declaration of intent, where you will say what is what your organization is about and what kind of role you would like to play inside the project, either in a sectoral hub, a work group expertise, part of the board, anything. Then there is a constitution design. We are already working on it. It's a draft. It's a draft, and you can help us to design it, write it down. So we define the rules of the governance inside the constitution, like what we would do for the European Union or a state government. And 3, you can submit a project that will be implemented in the first steps of the governance. So you can show us your project, and we will see if it fits with the governance initiative. So you can contact us on the Slack, on the MyData Slack, or you see our email addresses if you want to participate in the project.
And if you really believe in the idea and you like it, you can yourself go and present it to organizations and ask for their declarations of intent and how they would like to enter the governance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olivier and Matthias. Again, I would open this up for questions first to the participants of the webinar. So are there any questions as of now?
Okay, I can ask once more. So thanks for the presentation. I've been kind of following from distance. Yeah, it's Yogi from Finland. The development, haven't had a clear view. Now I have better view. So thanks for that. I'm curious about your approach towards EU funding. This is again something that comes from the strategy work that MyData Global is doing, and one idea there is that we wish to help different participants within the community to create joint funding projects, for example for EU, but for other funders as well. Not so that MyData Global would be the participant there, but we are kind of figuring out if there is a way that we could kind of leverage the network there. So are you looking for some specific funding call already, or is it like a more distant thought that you are just going for funding?
We already talk a lot with the EU Commission, so DG Connect, DG Justice, and DG Competition. Basically what they say is, show us that you can do it, and we will help you. and we want both funding and co-design. We want them to be involved, and the both come at the same time, I suppose. So yes, it would be of a great help if the community could help us. We've got the contacts already. We know the people that could work on this. They are really close to the MyData community. They were in Helsinki at the MyData conference, so we know the same people, I suppose. But yes, if you could help us, and the idea of the office installation in Brussels, so in the Brussels hub, MyData hub, will have the project new governance. The idea is to have a 6-month period to start talking for real with the European Commission and be with them in the same city about fundings. Now we will be really close to them.
Hello.
Yes, Abdul.
Okay, thank you. I just want to ask a question. I'm really proud to have to see this kind of presentation on the project. My question is it possible? Is it possible from Africa or from Cameroon, where I'm living, to be part of that project? What can I do?
Yes, it is possible. Because this, can you hear me well now? It is possible because we are now more and more also discussing, okay, we say GDPR and standards for GDPR, but how does it translate into other regulatory zones? So the first thing you could do is you, with your organization or with your expertise, tell us where you would like, on what you would like to work on the standards, and also you can go see the organizations you're close to of your ecosystem in Cameroon, and contact them and see how they'd like to participate, because we have seen that this is a crucial point for each organization to think about standards, and this will for sure get the foot in the door, and so you can start talking with them. And also at Helsinki, we met with Charlie, who is the kind of the director of MyData Africa, if I'm not mistaken, and is also in Cameroon working with us. So you could also, if you haven't already, you could connect with him.
I just want to know, to join the team, I need to go to Charlie, or there's a platform or any kind of email, because I don't mark the email you put in the end of your slide. And what can I do to join the team for the project?
No, you don't have to go through Charlie. We will show you our emails again. Can you see it now?
Okay.
Yeah. And also on Slack, on the MyData Slack, and from there we send you documents, and you can go, contribute on the constitution. You can fill in the declaration of intent on what you would like to work, and then according to what you would like to contribute, we can start working together.
Okay, I will send you the email, and we'll see how to work.
Please. And you can go on the newgovernance.org, where you can see the different partners, the first documents, and click on the Get Involved button to start gathering some data.
Okay. Thank you.
We will be very happy to have you in the team, and see how we can work with the African and Cameroonese ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. I am available to work with you, and thank you, and to join the team.
Okay, we through the MyData community, we already discussed it a lot with the US, of course, and with Japan also. So it's not European only, of course.
Yes, yes. We would love to, for administrators or who can appropriate themselves the project and be able to go engage.
Matthias, it's a bit hard to hear you.
Sorry, yes, I said we would love for MyData members across the globe to just appropriate themselves with the project and go talk to it to organizations and include them. It's the most collaborative and open project as it can be.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Is there any other questions specifically to Olivier and Matthias about the new governance at this point?
Yes, I might have one.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, that is about the project. When I read the scope earlier, it looked very much like it was focused on GDPR, and I would say GDPR has the articles 40 to 43 about codes of conduct and certification, and I see much of the work that was proposed would actually respond to being GDPR specific. But then there are also elements like you mentioned, MAS, which is definitely more, I would say, MyData beyond the GDPR stage. Do you think you can manage these projects in one pool, or don't you think we need to make a discrepancy between those so that we can say there's one focus on actually making some codes of conduct that could be burned into the GDPR as requirements, and then there's a second layer which is more about functionality and offering where the business model actually of MyData driven things are advantages to using the current platforms, for instance.
This is the position of the initiative is right in the middle of the MyData architecture and MyData declaration principle and GDPR. It's in the middle. It's a connection point, and we believe that as had been said before, it's really hard to make people work together. Coordination is really, really, really hard, and we don't want to separate the two issues. Yes, there are clear aspects of this inside the GDPR text. And here with MyData, we represent the community, the doers community, the innovators community. And we want to find a place in the middle to talk and to coordinate and to choose to decide. What we've heard from our many talks with the European Commission is that they will engage as soon as early 2020 in a review process of GDPR itself. So they will take feedbacks from everywhere, from people that try to be compliant, and in order to adapt GDPR. We try to build a place directly connected to institutions, to GDPR lawmakers, regulators, and so on, for them to talk directly to innovators, to the ones that are trying to do this. So yes, you could still have two separate entities. We are trying to put everything into one for coordination purpose.
I would also invite Lisa back to the discussion and to open this a little bit more to the topic of data governance and this building this trustworthy ecosystem more up. Would like to ask this question that you both talk about the need for this multi-stakeholder approach to building this. And this data governance or governance altogether is very much tied to kind of like power structures and a power balance or so forth. So what are in your initiatives the considerations that you keep in mind to keep the different views from various stakeholders in balance? Maybe yeah, Lisa can go first, and then Olivier and Matthias later.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so fundamentally, we envision having 3 stakeholder categories, 3 membership categories. But honestly, what we've been doing lately is doing a deep dive into studying commons. We've been looking hard at the commons governance structure and trying to see how it applies. And this is still work in progress for us because we view ourselves as actually producing public goods, which is different from a commons structure. And so we're doing a little bit of an academic exercise to look and see who out there has created interdependent frameworks that are built by the community, like a commons, right? That's the attraction of a commons architecture, is that it's built by the people who use the resources themselves. And so we don't have a firm outcome of that just yet, but we are really looking hard at how we create this to be a interdependent, self-governed, common kind of commons-esque kind of community. So that's where we're exploring.
Thank you, Lisa. What about Olivier and Matthias? What are your thoughts regarding that?
Yes, so of course for us, from the beginning, it was how do we unite all such different actors and that they feel kind of safe or wanting to get into the organization. And so the goal was to kind of show that nobody really, no interest can take over and impose, but that it will be a democratic and a clear decision-making process. So it was a bit difficult because first we were going to see a bank and they say, okay, I like it, but I want to be the only bank. So with some pedagogy, and when they see what's at stake and with the value through standards, they first get it. But how we imagine it, and this needs to be challenged and fine-tuned. But what we say in the governance, the board is comprised of 16 different interests. So I can't cite them all by memory, but it's academics, private business, privacy NGOs, human rights NGOs, institutions, founding members, etc., that make the decisions together. And then we saw that there are mainly 5 big types of organizations that are represented. Individuals, academics, private, public sectors, and NGOs. And how we say is that each gets 20% of the vote, and this is in the General Assembly and as well in the different work groups to define standards. So this is how we try to find an equilibrium between the different interests, because it's only if we can really stand by and guarantee that equilibrium that people come in. Otherwise, if there is one single interest that can take over, it will explode. And you can find the more detail of this in the Constitution. From newgovernance.org, you can access the Constitution, which is open for comments because it's going to be an ongoing process for at least another 6 months. And we are always getting more inputs to fine-tune it.
This project is a connection point between democracy and technology. If you had to sum it up.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems very interesting in the sense of like how to coordinate it and facilitate the different work within the governance structure, and of course, like also thinking this at the same time, like what are the relationships with also all the organization, all the sectors, all the people outside of the governance structure then as well. So it's as was discussed already earlier, that's there are a lot of different questions, and I'm eager to work on that, and also invite everybody else to continue the discussions also regarding the this like multi-stakeholder relationships, collaborations, coordination, kind of how to all make this work. Generally about the topic or questions directly to Lisa, Matthias, or Olivier, are there any comments or questions from the participants at this point? Not that I see anybody unmuting or raising a hand yet. Then I would also want to talk a little bit of what we discussed also earlier with Lisa, Matthias, and Olivier, that to develop these initiatives and work on in this field, we have to also think about all the different risks and think of like what could go wrong. So focusing on that, like what do you take it the most important to keep in mind and to consider that to go, that it wouldn't go as it would go wrong or so. What are the thoughts? And either Matthias, Olivier, or Lisa, whoever can unmute yourself first, can go ahead.
Hi. So actually, I've had some time to think about this since we were talking about it earlier this morning. I think here's the real cognitive dissonance that we face as a community. And this Yogi mentioned this when he said about bandwidth of these real interdependencies across organizations. Is that so the conflict is that you need focus in order to actually accomplish something. But we need coherence and orchestration in order to really accomplish the big thing that we all so desperately want to accomplish. And so I think that is the big challenge that we face is, if we go too broad, we accomplish nothing. We've seen this is a big risk. If we go too broad and we try to be everything to everybody, that's a very difficult thing to do. So how do we balance focus and our piece of the puzzle and trust that the whole puzzle is being effectively managed and going to result in the right thing? I think that's the piece I grapple with.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
Can I comment on this?
Sure.
Yeah, so this was really actually very inspiring. Thanks, Lisa, also for your presentation. So what was kind of obvious for me when I was listening to your presentation is that you have done the strategy work. So you can actually in clear way present in your slides that this is the way you think that your impact is going to roll out towards the bigger goal. And this is what we are now doing in MyData. We have been doing lots of stuff, and now, like, getting closer to 1 year of existence, we are now building our strategy, and we are using the framework of theory of change. Maybe you have heard of it. So there, the idea is that you kind of nail down the goal where you want to go, and for MyData it is what is written in the MyData Declaration, basically, and then track back that what are the obstacles, why it's not like that in the world right now, and then building the path from your current actions towards the bigger goal. And I was thinking that maybe if Me2B and New Governance and other organizations that are in the same space could actually just swap strategies, like see what kind of strategy work different organizations are doing that might build the base for having these negotiations, like, okay, let's do these things, or you do that, we do that, and they interlink and build towards the same direction. So very pragmatically, I'm suggesting that let's swap our strategies, read them through, and connect afterwards.
It's Olivier from ANG. As an answer, I would say compared to Me2B, a new governance doesn't go into that much details about standards themselves. It's just the framework for discussion. So it's a different role. And it's built on top of the MyData community, and it will take the MyData values, principles, architecture, and bring it to politics and bring it to industries. The idea is to spread the model throughout industries.
Yes, we have talked a bit to Lisa about it. For instance, Me2B is working on frameworks on how to test in product development if the wishes and needs of people are taken into account. And we will take that framework and apply it to the projects that are built in a new governance. So this is also one first way we thought of collaborating as well.
We are personally, Matthias and I, we are innovators, entrepreneurs. We got building tools, MyData operators about PDC, consent, and so on. So we could see ourselves as competitors, but we create a place for us to agree and to talk. And this is what we've been doing for the past months. We talk to industries, but we also talk to other MyData operators in different countries, different markets. We work with, the first people we work with are exactly our competitors. And it's the same for standard initiatives. The idea is to find what we have, a place to see what we have in common, and work on the gaps between the different propositions. So this is a new governance initiative, is this kind of place. It's not in competition with anyone, basically.
Yeah, to me, it wasn't what I'm trying to the observation I was making in response to the shipwreck question is that from a practical perspective in terms of personal time management and like this, I'm just I don't have an answer to this, by the way, and this wasn't a criticism at all. This is just an observation, and maybe a criticism of me, is that like I'm involved in multiple standards bodies, and I try to monitor a bunch of the MyData Slack channels, and there's a point where I get concerned about my own self in terms of not being able to do the job that I want to get done in order to contribute my little puzzle piece back to the big puzzle. And so that is really the scope of kind of this, like it's a constant equilibrium of forest for the trees and how you manage that practically without being consumed sort of unhealthily one way or the other. I guess that was what I was getting at.
Great remark, Lisa. And the thing is, you've seen some of the brands, big brands from all over the world, banks, cities, and so on. And we are seeing a crazy traction around this initiative. We are amazed by the pace of it. we are trying to keep up. But if we gather that many brands around, and if you have a standard push to them, then it will redefine your priorities, I suppose. So this is the work we have to do now, is to gather as many stakeholders as possible. And then for your time management issues, if this is the place where it's a network effect, if this is the place where the brands are, where the politics are, then you will have to position yourself around this initiative. So this is the game we play with Matthias, is gathering as many stakeholders as possible and very fast for other initiatives to at least have a look at what it is and what it means.
Great, thank you. And I think the metaphor that has kind of stayed with me while listening to you is really this to figure out how the puzzle is built together, while everybody can also, like you said, Lisa, also make sure that the one piece of what they're working on is done well, and that they have the resources and time for that. There are some further comments on the links that could be good reading further on this topic. We can also put it up for the website with together with the recording for further reading. And I also encourage everybody to either use MyData Global Slack for following up on that discussion, or getting in touch with Lisa, Matthias, and Olivier regarding their initiatives. Before I close the webinar, I would just want to give one last chance to the participants to ask final question if they have, or have a final comment. So is there anybody who hasn't had the chance yet to ask a question, comment? Doesn't seem so. So I would, thank you, Lisa, Matthias, and Olivier, for the great presentations and follow-up discussion on this. I will share the recording of this webinar also in the MyData website at mydata.org/webinars next week. So you can also have this as a base for further thinking and referencing when following this up. And I heard that there were 2 call to actions anyway, to join the 2 initiatives, but also the third one from Yogi to also share the different strategies from the various organizations, to learn from them and also build and grow from that. So that's good amount of call to actions for one webinar, I would say. MyData.org/webinars also will have the schedule for the coming webinars, and we'll try to do it routinely every 2nd and 4th Friday of the month. So the times, the dates will be the same, but the times will be changing depending on the presenters' availabilities, as well as to be fitting to different people from different time zones. Let's stay tuned regarding the next webinars, and thanks again for all of you to participate in this webinar today. I wish you a great day, and what's left from this Friday, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks everyone.
Bye. Bye.